drawing system and also a figure drawing instructor at Pixar, Mike Mattesi. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Mike.
Yeah,
My
it's an
pleasure.
absolute pleasure. I'm your host, Kevin.
And I'm your co-host, Brian.
Awesome. So yeah, Mike, that's pretty interesting that you've created your own drawing system. So can you give us a little bit of overview of what Force actually is?
Force is an animator's approach to figure drawing. So it combines the ideas of physics and gravity and how the body is affected by that, and yet how beautiful the outcome of that is at the same time. You know, that we all have rhythm and fluidity and we're these amazing functional creatures. And I would say beyond that, then finally comes performance and acting and everything else that we're capable of, as human beings.
Right.
So you kind of mentioned this is more of an animator's approach. So how does that differ versus, let's just say, somebody who's in a more static drawing field like comic books?
That's a great question. I would say there's lots of different ways to learn how to draw. My process is called Force. So it's about gravity pulling down on the body and yet the body itself moving itself in different directions against that force, right? The ultimate force is gravity here. And I think a lot of other systems, they don't think about that when they're drawing. You learn how to draw a figure and it's usually made of, let's say, tubes and boxes, and you learn more perspective and construction. That's how a lot of imagination fields of drawing are taught. From a construction standpoint, not that I don't draw from imagination, I do, but it comes more from a functional standpoint. Like, how does this person stand? Why are they able to stand like this?
Yeah.
Like this? And that brings in balance, and balance is gravity, and rhythm is what affects mass moving relative to gravity. And that's what creates balance. Where a lot of comic book guys, it's not like they don't use force, but if they've come from a school that specifically taught them how to draw for comics, they probably are coming from a construction system, which is kind of the norm. There's also this other system, which is like the atelier approach, and that's more of a, it's a little bit of like a copyist system, I would say, at the front end, like teaching you how to see and measure, lots of measuring.
Right.
Which is also has its validity. It doesn't help with drawing from imagination, because that means you're chained to reference because you've learned how to copy something really well, right? So I'm kind of in the middle there of like, I do agree that you should be able to see. You should have some skill at like copying. You want to be able to see.
Right.
But more so, I want you to understand what you're seeing. And that's the sort of how to draw skill versus my eye is good. And I've taught my brain to trust my eye. But how is this happening? It's almost like being like a structural engineer or an architect. Like I took four years of architecture in high school, and I still think there's part of me that comes to play here. Is so sometimes I look at the model as a building. I'll be like, wow, they're standing. Why are they able to balance like this? And I've just, in a way, you're drawing diagrams of energy to show how the body works, and then mass gets attached to that. It's almost like having the 2x4s and you're making this really modern house, but it better work at that 2x4 level, because now you're going to put sheetrock and electrical and pipe through it, right? And you don't want it to fall over when you add all this weight to it. It needs to be balanced and counterbalanced to work. So to me, the body's kind of like that. It's like, I want to figure out the diagram of forces. How are they standing? How are they balanced? We're adding more form and structure. Is it still holding up or not? Right.
And I mean, that's pretty interesting. In high school, you were actually able to take that. That's pretty rare, because I remember in my high school, there was one drawing instructor, and you'd see him once a week, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, I'm a lot older than you are. And over time, they've gotten rid of all these art programs. Where we live now, my wife just went to an art community group at this town not too far from us, and they said how what they're doing is they're going to cut back the art classes from 50 to 40 minutes. In fact, I think a lot of classes, and what they're doing is they're spreading the teachers thinner by making the classes shorter, and by them being shorter, they can take on more students because they can shove more classes in, right?
Wow.
So Like that's like the new shtick, you know, the new system they're creating is let's
No,
get
there's definitely major problems with the education system in this country and probably in other countries, but you know, in the US, I've just seen it kind of get degraded over time. And you know, like I'm talking about, you know, the high school I went to, it was a private school, but they had like, you know, no music program at all. I'm a musician, so yeah, I mean, I did everything outside of school. I'm a drummer, so I had bands outside of school. So, you know, I would just go to school, get through it, get home, start playing. And
Mhm.
that was kind of how I went about my day back then.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting that it was even a private school and they didn't have it, right? That you'd think they'd have music, you know, like it's kind
You'd
of been
think
proven.
so. Yeah, you would think
Yeah,
so.
it's proven that the arts help increase intellectuality and understanding and learning, you know, and to not have those things, I think is really ignorant for a school system to not take it on, you know. It's communication, it's expression, it's so many different things.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, I know like one of the challenges of being an animator is that you have to be right like several times in a row versus like, you know, a comic book, you can draw the perspective, you get it right one time, but an animator, it's in motion. So frame after frame, you have to get it right and, you know, deal with how clothing interacts with the body. So like, how does your system help with like continually getting it right frame after frame?
Yeah, there's a couple of things to address here, I guess. First of all, 2D animation, yes, not 3D animation anymore. Like once a thing is made, it's made. So you don't have to worry about staying on model, as I think what you're kind of talking about here, you know, like staying on model. And in comics, they have to, but to your point, there's way more wiggle room than there is in animation. And then I guess to answer your question about how does my system support that? Um, I, at the beginning, am actually not really strict about proportion. I give my students time through the three first pillars I teach are force, form, and shape. And through force and then form and then shape, there's different methodologies that come in towards measuring instead of just copying again, because that's all just measuring, right? We don't want to make that the focus. So there's small incremental things that come in over time that are measurements, you know, but we still want to keep that force thing as the foundation, as the focal point. So as you learn those things, you learn how to get proportionate or be on model or make sure that the model draw, you know, the drawing of the model is accurate to the model.
Right.
Like a great example would be shape, right? Like it's one of the big things you learn when, like when I was trained up at Disney Animation, right? I was on Lion King when I was like 23, right? And you learn to see the silhouette and the shape of like the overarching silhouette of a thing, and then the shapes that are within the shape of that thing. It's a very nested visual process you need to learn. You know, it's like, oh, Simba's head is turning. His head is this shape. How does the shape change as his head turns
Yeah.
to the shape of the ear? It is tricky. I have to say, you do get to the skill level of you need to know how to see things two-dimensionally and three-dimensionally. You know, like take an object that has bumps on it and know how to turn that form three-dimensionally and know that the silhouette changes with the rotation of that form and be able to track both things at the same time, basically. You know,
Yeah.
it's tricky.
What do you prefer? 2D, 3D?
Um, I think they're both awesome, you know, skills. I have never really dug down to say I'm a 3D animator. I've tried 3D and many types of software over 20 years, probably more than 20 years, almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And I just don't like doing it. I want to draw it. I don't like how much time it takes. I'm so much faster with a piece of paper, and I like the organicness of it. You know, I can burn out, you know, 15, 20 drawings in a few minutes, and on it, you know, in an animation, it would take longer for me to sit there and finagle the bully, you know, the curves to make sure that everything is working right. And it's more of a mental thing. I like the physicality and the problem solving of drawing versus being on the computer. You know, I love what it does. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, but
I
it's just
mean,
not.
I think back to childhood, all those Disney movies that everyone loved, you know, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Bambi,
Mhm.
Fantasia, and that was all 100% drawn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the computer stuff didn't really kicked in because of Pixar coming out with Toy Story was really like the first big one. You know, they'd done some small shorts before that, but Toy Story was the first really mega full feature 3D animated film. And the irony is it came out when Disney was not doing well in its 2D department. They had done Home on the Range and they did Princess and the Frog. You know, their last kind of mega hit that was 2D was Tarzan, and they had Treasure Planet, like Home on the Range, Princess and the Frog, and it's amazing how these bigger organizations financially, they really are riding right on the razor's edge of like, are we going to make it for next quarter? You know?
Wow.
So all of a sudden they're not doing well, and Pixar comes out with this like mega blockbuster hit, and execs are thinking 3D is why it made money. We need to do 3D, not story and creativity and characters we care about. No, it's 3D. That's the future. And it is the future, but that's not why it was successful. And maybe some part of it, maybe 10, 15%, because of the novelty of it was a new thing.
Right.
But it was story. It was a great story, you know, and great ideas, great characters, you know. It could have been a 2D film. It still would have been successful. You know?
Yeah.
So, like, interestingly enough, I've noticed that a lot of 2D movies, quote unquote 2D animations, are actually 3D, but like cell shaded, and you know, it kind of takes away. It looks a little too perfect. So it's something about hand drawn art that it's more organic looking. You just connect with it more. It's hard to explain why that is, but
Yeah, I think so. I think there's some truth in that. I mean, nowadays the CG has gotten good enough to where the things they do sometimes it's hard to almost differentiate. You know, like Klaus, the Christmas film that had come out a little while back by the studio in Spain.
Oh, right.
Like they did an amazing job of like 2D animation mixed in with like tech for the lighting, and it looks kind of this really perfect moment between 2D and 3D, you know, like just such a beautiful, beautiful film, you know. And 3D itself has come so far with how they're able to stretch and squash, you know, characters and their faces and their expressions. Like you go look at Toy Story, you look at Toy Story and you go all the way to, let's say, like Tangled by Disney, and there's a massive difference there, just massive. You know, those like 10 years or so.
Yeah.
Were huge. You know, there's just so much of a 3D growth that happened there. You know, Pixar kept just cranking up the volume on the technical prowess of their team there. You know, they had amazing technicians there, amazing programmers that, you know, just escalated the craft of 3D. You know, every film, you know, on Brave, for instance, you know, like hair was a big deal, right? Just giant head of red curly hair. And they had to figure that out, you know. And then Disney at that point, I think, or just was going to be buying Pixar. So that was like tech then that got to be shared with Disney Animation. Like Pixar tech was getting shared across the two organizations, and that just escalated the technology again.
Oh, wow.
Two companies. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You know, so all that stuff really propels the quality level, I guess you could say, the skill level, the technical skill level. It doesn't mean the stories are better, right? But the visuals.
Yeah. So do you prefer something like Shrek or Little Mermaid? Where are you leaning?
Yeah, I mean, I would always still say story first. I think story is what matters. As an artist, as a drawer, I'd want to say drawing a little more than CG, just because I can see the drawings. Even when it's colored, I'm like, I can see what they're doing, and the craft it takes, the skill. There's a new thing that just came out. It's probably one of the best things I've seen in the last few years. You know, Netflix broadcasts or streams Love, Death, and Robots. And in their latest season, season 4, there's a short called How Zeke Got Religion. And first of all, it's like contextually, it's what I love. It's like World War II. It's got Nazis in it and demons, and I love all that stuff. And it's about that. And then there's a guy named Gigi Cavanago who I've been following in comics the last few years. and he happened to art direct this short, and it looks exactly like his comics, which already like blow my mind. Like the skill level is so high in draftsmanship and drawing, in composition, and in color, and all that stuff is in this short. And it is, and then I wrote him on Instagram, and right after I wrote him, like a week later, he won like Annie Award for art directing that.
Wow.
Short. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Wow. You know, more people have recognized just how spectacular this is, not just me sitting here in my art skilled brain of my 30 years experience, like others know also that this.
So are they still putting out movies with 2D art, or is that largely in the past now?
Yeah, I mean, there's always like, you know, Aaron Blaise just put out a short, right? And now Andres Deja is starting to really more heavily advertise his short. So it's interesting to see these former Disney animators / directors say, this is not dead for me. I'm going to make my own darn movie.
Right.
know? I don't know what'll happen there. I don't know if nothing will happen, meaning does it get traction? You know, is it enough to inspire others? I could see it inspiring younger kids in a new generation of going, you know what, I really want to do 2D also. I mean, yeah. My career right now is I teach online at drawingforce.com, and that's my full-time job. And, you know, I have a lot of students that are like, man, I love 2D. It's almost like them saying, man, I love the 80s. I loved Stranger Things. Yeah. I want to play Dungeons and Dragons, you know. Right? They're like, I love 2D. I love those old video games. I love pixel art. You know, like there's, I think, a yearning for the craft of that and what that felt like and what it means to create it is not what it is today, you know? So who knows? I hope it does inspire. Will it ever go big again? I don't know. I hear rumors that Disney is talking about the idea of doing another 2D animated film. I don't know how real that is. You know, they just changed CEOs there like a week or two ago. I don't know what that means. You know, the new guy seems more invested in the past than Iger was. You know, I think he was really in fact, he had this relationship he was setting up with OpenAI, and I just saw on Instagram that they stopped that. They canceled that contract. So I was like, wow, that's cool. You know, they're not going that way with this new CEO, right? Like they shut down Sora, which was an AI.
I heard about that.
Yeah. So let's see where this goes. You know,
yeah, I was about to ask you, like, what are your thoughts on AI? You know, because I know we went from 2D hand drawn to 3D. That kind of pulled you back a little. Now it's even more pulled back with AI to where you just kind of tell the AI, make this for me.
You know, it's interesting. Me and the team at drawingforce.com, we've had this conversation, especially about 2.5, 3 years ago when it really was like on fire. Everyone was like, "Rah, AI, like destroy it," you know?
Right.
No one's asked me. You're the first interview that's actually, you know, where people are going to watch. And here I am publicly saying what I think about AI. And I'm torn. I think it's ignorant to say it's not useful. At the same time, I think it's terrifying. You know, I really do. I think it's really scary. Will it allow people to work faster? Yes. Can it empower artists? I think yes. I've seen proof of it. I mean, I've seen one of my friends, I came over his house when this whole AI thing started, and he had these 3 books on his kitchen table. And he's like, hey, check those books out. You know, so I'm flipping through the books. It looks like 3 different artists' books, you know, very unique styles. The artwork in all 3 was amazing, but totally different things, totally different. He's like, I created all 3 of those using AI over like the last like month or 2, you know?
Wow.
And he's super talented. He's an extremely talented artist that I've been friends with for 30 years. We met at Disney Animation. Like, you know, I've known him for a very long time. And I was like, damn, this is amazing, right? Like I'm getting to see, and he's getting to see facets of him he never saw before. And you're doing it in a very condensed amount of time, right? In his lifetime, he probably would have never have accomplished these 3 books, ever.
Right.
Here he had the chance to witness the creation of 3 other versions of him where he could go. And that was super exciting. And I remember after that, we got in the car and we went out, maybe out to eat or something. We were talking, and I was like, you know, he's like, I don't have any interest in working on it anymore right now. He's like, I'm burned out. I did what I wanted to get out of the system. But it allows you to riff off of that right? It's like, now that I see these other things, I could work on top of that, right? The problem, and I think that's amazing. I think all that's amazing. You know, I'd like to, I haven't had the time myself to go do it. I'd love to go and tinker in there. I just, every time I go for 2 minutes, I'm like in mid journey. I'm like, I don't understand how this works. I'm out because I don't have the time to sit there and like figure it out, you know? But the fear is jobs. Jobs is really the big fear. If there was no, you know, money on the planet Earth, who'd care? Like, what AI does, right?
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever, right? Who cares? But we're worried about money in our careers and like, where does AI go? Is this like Wall-E by Pixar? You know, we're all going to be fat and lazy and like floating lazy boy chairs, and that's going to be our lives. Because and how
the whole like universal basic income, that whole idea.
Yeah, exactly. And what does that mean then?
What does that look like? Right?
Yeah, is it socialist or communist? Are we all then just equal? You know, and we all just live comfortably now, like. And there's no drive in that, because now you're not making anything to prove like I've worked my tail off or I'm better at this and somebody else is better at this, right? That's how the world works. That's capitalism, right?
Pretty much.
So, yeah. So it's you know, I'm torn. I'm very torn on the AI thing. I don't want people to lose their jobs, and I think they will. I think that already I'm seeing higher level jobs in programming and art. Those are kept because, like, I was an art director for 25 years in games, right?
Oh, wow.
And those jobs will stay, but the junior jobs, they're harder to get juniors in, because I don't need to hire a guy just got out of college. I can use AI to be that guy, right? Because I can just say, hey, come up with these ideas, blah, 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 blah. Or I can sketch something, throw it in there and say, paint this up to me, you know, for me in 6 different styles, right? And boom, it can do it. And I can take it from there. Yeah, it can do it, right? It's like you've got this crazy art slave at your fingertips, right? And it happens with programming. It happens with architecture, interior design, right? It's like all of a sudden you don't need the young kid coming in from the school to do it, right? To help, or have an army of them to do these things, to push a game, let's say, forward. You can be an AD and be a super powerhouse all on your own, you know, and that's the part that scares me. I'm scared. You know, I have 2 daughters that are in their early 20s. You know, fortunately, I shouldn't even say that, but it's true. It's like, fortunately, it's not art specific. They are both artists, ironically. One really wanted to go into directing and acting. The other one's a singer-songwriter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they're both like super creative. I'm like, can't you be like a dentist or something, you know? You know, or a doctor, or a lawyer.
I mean, I'm sure you've told them how, you know, just how difficult it is to be an artist. Like,
it is.
I spent 10 years in Los Angeles as a drummer, and had some really, you know, I'll be honest, that's some really tough times over that period.
Yeah, of course, you know, but at the same time, it's hypocritical of me to say, you can't go after your dream. I did. My parents were willing to back me up, right? Yeah. But it was the time too. I didn't have AI to deal with. I didn't have the internet. I could just focus on my own little world, go to school and try to get a job, which is what I did, you know. You know, I just spoke at down in San Francisco at this community college, and they brought in like 300-400 students of different high schools in the area. I just got back from there like last night, actually. And, you know, and they brought up the AI question. So that was the first time I guess I talked about it in like a room, but there was only 30 to 50 people, not where this will go, you know? And, you know, it is, I told them it is tough, you know? But at the same time, you guys have the internet. I didn't have that, right? Like, you can go do a Kickstarter, you can make your own show and go onto YouTube. You can use AI to help you make your show. You write it, you design it, you create it. You could do the voiceovers. You and your buddies can do voiceovers. Maybe you don't animate it. I don't know. Maybe the AI animates. Maybe the AI helps you get a turnaround on a character. You don't do the full turn. You do like the front and side. You have those like assistants. You know, this assistant that lets you go like faster and faster. So my crystal ball, as crude as it may be, is I hope that more artists will become entrepreneurial. And that's a big ask, because artists are not typically entrepreneurial, you know. And they make little businesses, you know, 5-10 people, and they start making their own shows, and we get more of that, you know. And there's a new level of individuality and independence that could come out of that, instead of thinking the only way out is I need to get a job at a studio, you know. I told them yesterday afternoon, I said, if it was me, they were like, what would you do if you were me? I'd say I would learn my skills. I would put a portfolio together to get a job.
Yeah.
And
100%.
And I would work on my own project. I would do both.
Yeah.
I would get
Yeah.
both things going, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do something outside of corporate America because you'll get axed in an instant. Like me, I'm in software, and like you mentioned, okay, the junior roles, they're disappearing. But from what I've seen, AI is so good that a lot of the senior roles can be kind of done away with. Now, seniors are pretty much they're verifying what Claude outputs. So you're going to pretty much have seniors who verify or architects who are coordinating all of these agents and things together. And if all you can do is like the rote thing of coding, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I read that programming was probably the thing that's using AI the most right now, which means it's probably under the biggest threat, as well. The employees are under the biggest threat,
I think we're kind of in this space where CEOs, they think it can do a lot more than it can, but it can do a lot, but it's dangerous if you don't know what it's doing. I've
Right.
even heard of it like deleting a company's production database, like Claude or whatever.
Wow.
So
yeah, I mean, you need somebody who knows what they're doing to watch it. Like I
Yeah.
said, you got your own little slave here, but you don't want the slave drinking on the job or playing with guns. Like I'm going to watch you, but you're going to do what I tell you to do. And you did that wrong. Go fix it. Right?
Go fix that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Have you heard of a Moltbook? It's kind of like a Reddit that was created by AI agents, and it's nothing but AI agents talking to each other.
No, I have not.
It's amazing how human they sound. And, since AI is emulating humanity, I wonder, what do we do when, let's just say this agent gets bored or it wants to do something other than what you tell it to do? Like,
yeah.
Do we consider that, or do we just force it to do what we're telling it to do?
And then I guess a better question is when we think about robotics, we're going to put, or not we're going to put, we're already putting AI into robots. So what's that going to look like when you give it a command and it all of a sudden decides, okay, I'm not going to agree with humans any longer. I'm no longer going to be compliant by my, quote, master. And then what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're seeing the beginnings of the reality of all these sci-fi films we watched over the decades, right? It's pretty crazy. I mean, look, they just had a case with I think it was YouTube and Instagram where these families won this case about how these platforms are designed to be addictive, right? And these parents won, right? Saying, you guys are purposely, creating an addict out of my child, right? Yeah. So what is that going to do from a legislative standpoint? God forbid someday somebody's going to get shot by a robot, right? And then all of a sudden, it's not, as long as they don't all do it at the same time, we have this giant army of robots with guns, right? And which I don't think will happen, but it's possible. Who knows, right? But if that happens once, then the hammer of society can go, okay, this needs to change, So hopefully we never end up with, iRobot or Terminator or any of these other, sort of robot-based films, Surrogate, all these different sci-fi.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it's like this, it's this amazing thing like that could help us cure cancer. But
that's the thing. Yeah, it could cure all kinds of diseases.
Right. So you have this thing that is, this magic superpower, and it's neutral. It can be good or bad, right?
Right.
It's up for humanity to control it in a way to only point it to where we want to point it. And if it gets smart enough, we won't be able to point it at all.
Exactly.
That's right.
Itself, right? And that's where I don't know what to do about that. I don't know what the answer is there.
Because we're still at the point where like we can lord over it, like you mentioned, it's kind of our servant, but it's getting intelligence so fast that you might become the servant.
You become the servant. Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's like the Matrix. We'll all be buried in these little capsules, and they're using our energy like batteries to run the robots.
Like you mentioned that movie Surrogate or Surrogates with Bruce Willis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like their whole world, I mean, everyone's in the virtual reality land. So then when you come out into the real world, it's like this kind of like dark place that's all disconnected. And you got to wonder if we're going in that direction as a species.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see it because AI, it feeds off of human like intelligence. It needs us to generate creativity, and then it can, analyze it and do whatever it's doing with it. So, like you mentioned, we're almost like batteries for it right now,
That's
feeding
true.
it creativity.
That's true. That is true. I mean, I have some students that are very deep in this AI thing, artistically and creatively, as jobs even. And they still say like it is very difficult to make it do exactly what you want it to do. It's
Yeah.
very, very difficult, especially in art. Very, very difficult to do exactly what you want. And it's still really just a high-end search engine in a way. It's still going out there and just trying to get answers and put them together to respond to your questions and your inputs. But the day will come. I forget what they call it. There's a term for when it really starts learning. When it can
Singularity.
Singular. Well, that's one. Yeah, that's
Or
like
the AGI, artificial general intelligence, or artificial super intelligence.
Yes, artificial general intelligence. When it gets to AGI, then what?
Then what? Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, like me and Kev, we've had a lot of conversations over the years now about AI, and we used to talk about like, okay, say like 5 years ago, was anyone talking about AI? No. I mean, it was around, machine learning was around, but was anyone focused on it? No. And then for some reason, the past maybe 2-3 years, it's AI this, AI that, everything AI. And you got to wonder why. Is there an agenda behind this coming out and developing so quickly?
I think, I'm coming in from the art world, and it made a huge splash when a bunch of relatively like famous artists saw themselves in this AI work, and it could even see chunks of their signature buried in the artwork because it's mixing and matching stuff.
Yeah.
The artists were like, oh my God, what's going on? It's ripping me off, right? It's stealing, and it's coming from these platforms that I never agreed to allow. I never signed anything to agree to this, to allow this to happen. And it feels like you're stealing from me. It took me years to create this skill, and this thing is putting images together in my style, right?
Right.
So it made this huge splash, at least in the art community, and that was all over the place, and that's when, like I said, everything was really fired up. Not that it isn't now, but it's calmed down. Yeah.
I've seen like maybe it was like a few months ago or maybe a year ago, everybody was creating that Miyazaki-esque artwork using AI, and I think AI-based plagiarism, that is kind of a thing. Like create artwork in the style of this artist, and you're essentially taking their style and making something off of it and profiting. I know like the music industry is really going through that right now. Like,
yeah,
it's the profit part, right, that causes the issue, right? Because some artist was arguing, well, when we're artists, we usually copy off of other artists also, like as if we were an AI, and that's true. But this is on such a volume level, so mass produced, that it feels like it's an issue. And God forbid you do turn it into money. And I think OpenAI was doing that with the Miyazaki stuff. I could be wrong on that. I don't remember, but I could swear there was some kind of financial component to that, and then that's a whole different ballgame. It's like, there's no way you're going to make money off of the 80 years I've spent, making these anime films, from Ghibli,
I think, the interesting component too is, like you mentioned, kind of like the compensation of the people who are creating a pattern. Let's just say in the programming world, you have like Stack Overflow, and we have this, it's called Tailwind CSS. It's like a CSS framework, like they had to lay off people because instead of people going to their site and looking at the documentation, and I believe they had like ads or stuff you could buy. That's kind of like how they supported themselves. Like you come to their site, look at their documentation, and maybe you buy something or something. But now AI is just giving them the answer immediately. So, if it's taking revenue away from people going directly to the source, like instead of going to Stack Overflow now, AI is just crawling it and giving you the answer.
Right.
that's going to go out of business. And now once that source of information goes out of business and AI no longer can feed off of it, then is it going to like everything going to start collapsing in on itself?
Right. So I don't want to change the subject. Just want you guys to be aware of if there is anything else you want to talk to me about.
Oh yeah.
Because we could go on for probably about 6 hours on AI.
Yeah, no, for sure. One thing that I'm curious about, I'm sure our listeners would like to hear about, is how did you actually get into animation? At what age was it? What inspired you? What does that all look like?
I'll try to be as brief as I can here. But so I went to high school. I took 4 years of architecture. Fourth year, I was like, there's way too much math. I was following comics, and The Dark Knight came out by Miller and Jansen, right? And I was like, I'm going into comics. I found a school. I lived in New Jersey. I found a school in New York called the School of Visual Arts. High school teacher had a poster of that school in his classroom, this class I was taking in high school. And I was like, I'm going to see if they have it. Oh, they have a cartooning program. I'm going there. Boom. I tried for one school. I went to that school. I got very lucky. There were amazing teachers that I had there, people who I would not be here without today, right? That really helped me get here. I had amazing figure drawing instructors. I had amazing comic book art teachers. But what happened was, this was a life-changing moment. In my junior year, I think it was my junior year, first week of school, junior year, fall, 1991, I was in this history of animation class. And the teacher introduced a guy named Tony Cipriano and said, and I knew Tony because he was in a humanity class of mine the year before. So I kind of like, I knew him just in passing, you know? So he's like, Tony just came back from the Disney internship from this past summer. And Tony, and I want Tony, you know, Tony wants to share it with you guys. So I was sitting there in the audience and he was like, it was amazing. You know, like it was like the best thing ever. You know, they want me back. They just wanted me to graduate school. He was going into his senior year. He was a year older than me. And it just sounded spectacular, you know? So
Yeah.
after class, I went down to him and said, you know, hey, Tony, I'm really interested. Like, I'd like to know more about this internship. He's like, hey, I got my portfolio that got me in down on the street in the trunk of my car. I just drove up from Florida like yesterday, right? And here I am in class today. And he's like, you want to see it? I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So here we are on 23rd Street, New York, and he walks me down. We go over to his car, opens it up. It's filled with all of his dirty clothes from his trip, right? And he like unburies his portfolio and opens it, and I start flipping through it. And this giant light bulb went off. I was like, wow, I think I could do this. I think I have the ability to get here. Is this what they're looking for? I think this is a whole avenue I never considered.
I can do it. Yeah.
Do it. Yeah. And it's drawing. And his portfolio was full of drawings. And that's what I loved doing more than anything, was just to draw. So that was already a massive focus of mine. I would say I went to school for comics, but really I went to school to learn how to draw. I swore, like, no matter what, by the time I leave this school, I have to have the skill to draw. That was my main focus.
Right.
So here is this animation thing. And I was like, this is almost easier than comics, because I just need to know how to draw figures and faces and hands and like animals. And I'm already doing all these things anyway. It wasn't, it wasn't composition, storytelling, layout, writing. It wasn't, clothing, costume, all that stuff. I just had to draw these figures, right? So that changed. I didn't change my path, but it gave me a new path. So I had this mindset. I've got 2 portfolios that I'm going to have to get through the rest of my junior year and senior year. Senior year came along. You always had to get through the illustration chair's filter. You had to get picked to be shown to Disney. They didn't want to like overwhelm Disney with people that they knew would have no shot, right?
Right.
So he would pick like 2 or 3 people out of the whole grade across illustration, cartooning, like on any of the art like class. Not like a graphic designer wouldn't have the skills, for instance, to do it. And he would pick like 2 or 3 people for Disney to meet, right? It was really, really hard. And I got picked. I got picked in my senior year for them to look at my work. I met with Frank Gladstone, who was the recruiter at the time. He's like, I really like your stuff. He's like, I think it just needs a little bit more work. He's like, I want you to come back next year. He's like, I want you to focus on more form in the inside spaces and stuff, and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, okay, So that unfortunately was like this curse, because I graduated. I was putting my eggs in that basket in a sense. I really thought, man, I'm going to go right out of school, right into this job.
Straight into it.
So I had a comic book portfolio. I had Will Eisner senior year. I don't know if you know who Will Eisner is, but Will Eisner was in the comic book industry. There's an Eisner Award. I mean, he's basically like the Oscar Award for comics, and he taught at SVA. So I had excellent teachers. I had a pretty strong portfolio, but I knew it didn't feel like it was ready yet. I didn't feel like I had found my voice clearly enough across the portfolio. This is my style. This is how I draw. So that was May. I found out that Klaus Janson started teaching in the fall. He was on The Dark Knight, which is why I wanted to go to school.
Nice.
And I was like, son of a gun. Like, of course, he comes in like right after I graduate, right? So I walked in there. Yeah, I was so frustrated. I walked back into New York. I went into his class. It was a Monday. And I brought my portfolio with me. And after class, I said, look, I just want to know if I can sit in on your class. You know, you're part of the reason I'm even here. I showed him my portfolio, and he offered to mentor me for free for a year. He's like, I pick one person every year, right? He's like, and I want to know if you want to be that person. So of course I said yes. So
that's an amazing opportunity.
Shocked. I was in there hoping I would get out, you know, and now
right.
It's like mentorship with Klaus, right? So I did that between May and like March of the following year, not May, from September to March of the following year. And Disney came around again. And those months were kind of torture, because I just went through this emotional ride of, I think I can do it. You know, Frank told me to come back, right? He's interested in seeing me again. And that's a miracle in itself. You know, like this was, just to give you a framework of time period, this is early 90s. They were finishing, I think, Aladdin. Beauty and the Beast had come out, you know, Little Mermaid had come out. This was like the rock star opportunity, right? It's like, this is the lottery ticket. If you get a job there now, it's a freaking miracle, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's a miracle if I get in, though. You know, it's like, who knows what the competition is? I had no idea how many other people were submitting for these slots. You know, there were 16 slots for the internship. So I work with Klaus. I'm waiting for Disney. I'm creating my comic book portfolio. I see Klaus every week. I'm improving my portfolio. Disney comes back. Frank looks at my work and says, you know, it's good enough to send down. All right, we're going to send it down. Goes down. Then you wait like another month before you hear back from them. So that's even more torturous. Now your stuff's down there and you don't know. You could still be told no, you know. And, you know, lo and behold, I get a phone call from Frank one day, and he's like, hey, Mike, I don't know how to tell you this, guy, but I think he said, I don't know how to tell you this, buddy, but you got in, you know. And I was blown away, you know.
Wow.
I'll never forget that day. I literally came out of my bedroom jumping around the furniture. I remember my dad hadn't work yet, and I was like jumping on the couch and on the chair in the living room. And I'm like, I got in. So that's how it all happened. You know, it was hard work. It was a love for the craft of drawing. It was the crazy mind tricks I played on myself to believe I had a shot at any of this. I was always like, I got to be the best in my class. I got to be the best when I graduate. I always put that pressure on me in a good way. And I think that all led to me getting that opportunity, you know, and having some peace, even 5%, 10% of like, maybe this actually can happen, you know, maybe.
Yeah, I think,
you know,
a lot of this stuff, you know, when I think back in my music career, a lot of it is just, you know, confidence, resiliency, you know, having a no quit type of attitude. I'm just going to push through.
Yeah.
You know, like I started playing drums at 14. By the time I was 16 and a half, I'm in like 4 or 5 different bands.
Wow.
Traveling out of state. Wow. I eventually started doing national tours, international tours. Wow. But it all started with just that moment of me in the basement with this beat up drum set, bashing away. Everything starts somewhere, I guess what I'm saying. So like, now I play an hour a day, regardless. It doesn't matter what I'm working on. I try to make myself play for an hour because I want to push the art form forward.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
want to see stuff that I've heard and do it better or put my spin on it. And I teach, so I'm always trying to get into my students' mind, their head, and say, look, okay, I showed you X, Y, and Z, but I
Right.
want you to come back in a week and show me A, B, and C. I
Right.
want you to take it and just put your own flavor on it, you know? And that's a big part of my teaching is regardless of what I show you, you would then have to make it your own because that's what I always did just naturally. And I, naively thought, oh, this is what every drummer must do. But no, a lot of people, they never think to do that. So it's a big part of my teaching philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that. I think music and art, of course, like visual art, are very similar in many ways. God, most of like art education is to learn skill. It's like the skill of drumming. And the hardest part is everyone's different when it comes to if they have the ability to find their own voice. Very hard. Some people really get it; they've already had that in them, and others are not like that. You really have to teach them, or they'll never get to that. That's happened too. It's tough. It's tough to like form individuality or opinion, whatever you want to call it, and find your style or your voice. And I think any art, to allow it to go there, especially when you do learn skills. It's easy to learn skills and get kind of trapped in the genericness of skills, and then not have a voice,
I remember one of my old drum teachers, at the time I was trying to learn death metal. So like really, really fast blast beats and all double bass.
Right.
Yeah. And or thrash metal and stuff like that. I was just into that at that time. And I was talking to my drum teacher. I'm like, I'm trying to play this thing, but I can't quite get the speed. He said, look, don't focus on that one thing. Focus on a collective of things. And then by the time you're able to do that, the speed will come just from you working on all these various techniques or different examples, beats, whatever.
Right.
So that was very eye-opening for me that, okay, even though I want to play this thing that's really hard and really fast, me doing that specifically probably won't get me there. I need to take kind of another course to get to that goal. And that was just very eye-opening for me.
Yeah, you had to learn other skills to actually get to that skill. It sounds like there was a roundabout way of I need to learn more and this will happen,
Pretty much.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Lots of times when I talk about art, I say, it's like learning some martial art. That's why you go in, it's like, what was the name of that film? Wax on, wax off, right? It's like, you got to learn these basic
Karate
skills.
Kid.
Yeah, Karate Kid. That's such a big reveal in the film, right? Like waxing on and off and doing this and that leads to they're actually moves, right? You learn these moves, and then the moves you practice them enough that when you need them, it's intuitive, right? And that's where you want to get the drumming. That's where you want to get the art. You have to know enough of the skills to like get that intuition. It doesn't mean that you can't also try to practice intuition on the path there. I try to have my students do that,
Yeah.
But it's still, you have to have the skill to pull it off. Otherwise, there really is no intuition, or you're just total bullshitting, and you're not really doing it in a way that has any skill. It's just not music.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at when I say I show a student one pattern, and I say, okay, take this for the week, digest it, but I want to see you do something. Not I want you. You have to. You're gonna come, you're gonna come back here in a week and see me, and you're gonna change what I showed you into your own thing. And that slight push against the student to get them to go in that direction, I think is huge. Cool. And no one really necessarily did that for me. I figured this stuff out on my own. Right. Maybe I'm just blessed in that way, but it's a big part of my teaching. Yeah.
You must have, first time we're really talking in person, and you must have a relatively strong personality or belief in yourself enough to have done that. You know, that's not, and I got to tell you, that's not the usual. That's not the norm, you know, just across all the people I teach. You know, I have students even I teach them how to art direct themselves. So we look at a lot of other artists and go like, yeah, I like that that guy does that and that guy does that. Let me try to bring that in. So I can imagine being a drummer and saying, let me look at what the guy from Rush does. You know, what is he doing over there? Let me try some of that. I don't like all of it, but I like this thing. I'm going to play with that a little bit. Oh, I like this thing over here. And I think, you know, it's like making your own pot of soup. You start putting these things around, you play with them, certain things stick, others leave, and you really
it's like a puzzle. You put one piece together and then you take a step back and like, okay, I'm missing X, Y, and Z pieces. Where are they? How do I form this, you know, the greater picture? Kind of like you're saying, Karate Kid, you know, wax on, wax off. Eventually that turns into actual moves. So there's, you know, you see the wisdom and the teaching at that point.
Yeah. And you start combining all these things and suddenly you're, you know, doing Taekwondo or karate the way you want to. You put these things together in different orders and the moves are different. No matter what, it's still your body too, right? It's like you doing it. Same with art or drumming. Like no matter how many, you know, sometimes style is too important. Like it becomes too important for the artist. And I'm like, look, no matter what, you're doing it. I'm not drawing your drawing, you are. So there's already a style, right? Because your body made it. Your brain and hands made this thing, not me, you know? So it's innately already in there. So be aware of that too, you know? Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's a cool subject, you know, trying to get there.
So what would you say, like you kind of mentioned your mentorship earlier and also school, like what lessons did you learn that actually prepared you for the industry? And after getting in the industry, what are some lessons that you learned that wasn't taught in those arenas?
You know, the one I bring up a lot that I still teach today and I use today, and ironically came from figure drawing, is hierarchy. I didn't know what that was. I didn't have prioritization. I learned it from one of my drawing instructors, and the wisdom of learning that in art taught me how to be an art director because of that. For instance, you know, it taught me how to write my books because of that.
Oh, wow.
It's really everything, you know. It's like the little narrative I guess I always spin up for this is like, you know, you want to go to the supermarket to get milk and that's the priority, and you go in there and you buy all these other things and you walk out without the milk. You know, it's like that was the priority. You know, it's like, well, I need to get milk. You know, it's because I'm going to get cereal. I'm going to make a shake. I'm going to do these things, but without the milk, all these things don't matter, right? So what's the order of events of that shopping list is the same thing of the order of events when I teach drawing. I'm very systematic at the beginning, right? I would teach those systems. So late, and I tell my students, like, you're going to learn these systems later. You can break them because the body is more sophisticated than even the systems I'm teaching you. You know, but you gotta go through the system first. You got to learn how to think like this. We're not born to think hierarchically. You know, like that's a trained skill. And that's probably the biggest one I talk about that I share. It just changed my life, you know, it allowed me to be successful in the jobs I was. You know, as an art director, I always knew what the big picture was.
Right.
You can get one of the producers or C staff come in and like, this thing over here doesn't work. And I'd be like, oh, okay, back a level, back a level, back a level. The reason that doesn't work is because of something all the way back here that's not making that work. It's actually attached to other things, you know?
Yeah. I mean, with music primarily, I teach feel. And so, I mean, another word for feel is groove or, you know, mojo. And really the way I do that is, okay, if I have a kid working on, let's say, Billie Jean, I'll be right there on the side of the kit with my drumstick hitting the hi-hat on all the quarter notes. So I'm literally giving the student the feel of the song. What they do with it is kind of up to them, but you know, that's where it starts, and then I allow them to grow naturally with whatever it is that I show them, and then hopefully they come back in a week and they have made it into something wholly new, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, it's cool.
So like how the portfolio is usually the cornerstone of being an artist and getting in the industry, but like now things are changing so rapidly. So how would you say someone should prepare to get into industry today versus how they would prepare, let's just say, during the 90s?
Yeah, I mean, portfolio still matters. It's not paper anymore, of course. It's either a website, or I know people that have gotten hired through their Instagram accounts,
Wow.
or not. Yeah. So some people have gotten jobs like that, but you still need a portfolio, so now it's, like I said, it's website based. You go to conventions. When I was younger, I went to conventions to buy comic books, but now these are real opportunities to get work, to meet people in the industry and really network and get each other's Instagram accounts and DM through that,
Right.
and have conversations
Right.
through that. Still all the same things. In art, I mean, it's still like drawing skill, design skill, creativity, just like the drumming. It's like the skills of, managing all of that correctly. And yet at the same time, having a voice, right? That's the big challenge. That's where the higher echelon of artists are. It's like, wow, that guy not only is amazing, but his style is cool also. And it's
Like
hard.
having your own stamp.
Yeah,
You just your own style artistically, the way you're approaching the craft, right?
It's very hard to create that, to like manufacture style. And nowadays, it's kind of a double-edged sword, the internet, because students have access to looking at more styles, but they all typically land on like the top 5 or 10 all the time. Like, these are the 5, 10 people that are really huge and great. And then all of a sudden, all the students look like those people,
Yeah.
So then you don't see style, all of a sudden it's all the same. There's like nothing new that pops up. It is risky too, because you're going in to do like a production job, and you either could be the rock star. And even if you are a rock star, are you going to last more than 5 to 10 years? Because after a while, your style is old, you've made your splash. Or do you change, right? That's possible if you can actually change and reinvent yourself. Or are you someone who comes in and you're just really damn good? You are so skillfully good, so you just keep working, but you maybe never become the rock star. You're not the top character designer at Disney or something, right? But you're a character designer. You work there.
Right.
You're making things. You got a job, right? So tricky. That's the one thing I think I bring up with students of mine, that I go, I don't really have an answer to this. Just something I want you to think about. You got 2 ways in. Just be super awesome and super skilled. And that matters no matter what, right? Like, that should go either way.
100%. Yeah.
And then, could we develop a voice here as well? Like, could we make you stand out at least a little bit, 5, 10% even, of like, I'm different.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at with my teaching. Okay, I show them the thing, and then they got to go home, take that home with them, do their own homework, and figure out, okay, how can I come see Brian in a week, and I'm going to have my own stamp on this. I'm going to have my own style. I always really push that, because like you're saying, style is tough. It's tough to actually, come up with your own thing. And like you said, the only problem with the internet is that you could grab all these great ideas, but then you just start looking like it, because you're just tracing it in or copying or shading or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's right. So, you got to watch that trap as well,
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour. It's amazing. Time just flew. We could have easily went another hour.
Yeah. So I wouldn't mind it, to tell you the truth, but I have another meeting I have to jump into. But it was awesome. Thank you for having me, guys. Great conversation. I didn't realize that we would have the subjects we had. Big AI conversation today.
We usually try to throw that in there. A lot of people are curious about, is AI going to take my job? Or, sometimes I tell people, I mean, I was born in 87, but in the 80s is when the drum machine came out. So I've heard from older drummers that when the drum machine first came out, they're worried, oh, this thing's going to replace us. We're not going to be able to tour. We're not going to be able to do sessions in studios. But no, I mean, yeah, it does have its place, especially in 80s music. But, even now, with even like a hip hop act, they're going to have a live drummer. and maybe even on the album, like the Roots, you know, they have a real drummer. And so there's, you know, I think now when you look at AI, it's kind of the same kind of thing. Oh, it's going to take all our jobs. I don't think it's going to take the jobs, but I think it's going to change the jobs.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll change it. And I hope that for art and music, you know, I think it'll hopefully empower people to iterate and experiment more, to hopefully find themselves even faster. I kind of hope in a way it shortens shortens the lifespan that it could take to find yourself and do the things you want to make. And therefore you can make more stuff in a more condensed amount of time, which means what would have taken you 50 years to figure out only maybe takes you 7, which means now there's more of you to discover because you can compress down that research time, you know?
Great point.
That would be my hope.
Before we get out of here, where's the best place for our audience to find you at? And did you want to leave them with any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, drawingforce.com is where I live. You know, if you go to Amazon or Google search, you know, you type in force drawing, you'll find me. I've written 6 books. I have a 7th one coming out at the end of April. So that one's on force, heads, hands, and feet. So if you go to Amazon, you'll find the force books. I always ask people to buy them through my site because it takes you to my publisher. Amazon always gets 50% of everything. They're like a gallery. So, yeah. So if you buy the book, yeah, it'd be nice if you bought them through my site. If you go to drawingforce.com and you go to the books page, there's a discount code and it'll take you to my publisher. But yeah, I'm very easy to find. You know, if you type in force or force drawing, it'll bring you to my site, and that's where I live. And I do mentorship. That's most of my career now, is I teach people one-on-one. That's what I did right before I came in this meeting. That's right where I'm going right now. Another student.
Very cool.
And, we also have, you know, monthly subscriptions and stuff there. So you can decide, depending on your budget and how fast you want to learn, you can be doing something where there's no feedback and you're just getting access to videos and you're learning on your own, all the way to the top-notch level is mentoring, you know, is being mentored. So you're learning from me or one of the other force instructors. There's 4 other teachers that I've taught over the years.
And so, that's priceless, really. You know, mentorship is so important in kind of achieving the goal, getting the success, getting the job, the role that, you know, you've always dreamed of. I feel like, you know, the other side of that is that you got to get that mentor. You got to learn X, Y, and Z, and then you can kind of get to the other side of the rainbow. You know?
I think it's in the most utilitarian version of this, you save a lot of time. You know, something that might take you 10, 15 years to learn with the right mentor might take you 6 months to a year. You know, because you're just floundering and looking and trying to get answers, and this person can tell you, don't do that, do this. Nope, you're not finished.
Focus in here.
Yeah, and the order of events of what you're supposed to learn, when you're ready to move on. That's always a big question. When am I ready? You know, it dramatically changes how fast you learn. Dramatically. You know, as I said before, I would not be here today without the soldiers that I've sat on and, you know, walked across in my career. You know, definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll probably have to check your courses out, because before I was going to be a programmer, I was going to be an artist. So
sounds good. We'll be there for
stuff out.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Brian.
We'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next.